At the family dinner, my mom looked straight at me and said, "You're no longer in the will." Everyone froze, including me. I'm Grace Walker, 33 years old, a civil lawyer from Boston. You'd think someone who fights for justice every day would know how to protect herself, but not when it comes to family. For years, I tried to earn my mother's pride, long nights, endless achievements, every victory hoping for just one word of approval. Yet at that perfectly decorated dinner table, filled with laughter and lies, she destroyed everything with one sentence. The air turned cold. My hands shook, not from fear but from realization. That night, I understood something terrifying. In my family, love was conditional, and I had just broken the condition. The sound of silverware against china echoed through the dining room like a metronome of awkward silence. My mother, Margaret Walker, sat at the head of the table, flawless posture, flawless pearls, flawless disdain. She always had a way of making silence feel like a punishment. Across from me was my brother, Ryan the golden child, the business prodigy, the man who could do no wrong. He was smiling, recounting another one of his success stories about a brilliant merger. Mom listened, eyes glowing with pride, as if he'd invented the concept of money itself. I tried to join the conversation once. "Actually, that company you merged with was..." But she raised her hand ever so slightly. "Grace, dear, can we not talk about work? It's your brother's evening." It was always his evening, his moment, his story. So I smiled, the way I always did, polite, restrained, professional, the kind of smile you wear when you're bleeding, but don't want anyone to see. When the waiter poured the next glass of wine, Mom turned to me suddenly. "Grace," she said, her tone deceptively soft. "I heard you were handling that lawsuit, the one against the city council." "Yes," I replied, forcing enthusiasm. "We actually won last week. It's one of the biggest..." She nodded once, unimpressed. "But how much did that really bring you? Prestige doesn't pay the bills, darling." Ryan chuckled under his breath. I wanted to scream. "You could dedicate your whole life to becoming the kind of daughter your mother would be proud of, only to realize she never wanted that kind of daughter in the first place." Dinner continued. Ryan talked about investments. Mom praised his strategic mind. I poured myself another glass of wine, hoping it would dull the sting of invisibility. Then, between the salad and dessert, she said it. "Ryan, I've updated the estate documents. Everything will be simpler now." My fork froze mid-air. "What do you mean, simpler?" She didn't even look at me. "It means Ryan will handle the house, the assets, the company shares. You don't need to worry about any of that anymore." Ryan's hand tightened around his glass. He couldn't even meet my eyes. "Wait," I said, my voice trembling. "You mean..." She looked at me then, with that cold elegance only mothers like her could master. "Yes, Grace, you're no longer in the will." There it was again, that same phrase, delivered like a casual remark, but it cut deeper than any blade. Everyone went quiet. Even the clock on the wall seemed to stop ticking. I wanted to ask why. I wanted to stand up, flip the table, demand an answer, but years of conditioning held me down. The polite daughter doesn't raise her voice. The good girl smiles through humiliation. Mom went on as if she hadn't just detonated a bomb. "It's better this way. You have your own life, your career. Ryan will take care of the family's legacy. That's what he was meant for." The word legacy burned in my chest. I looked around that perfectly lit room, the gold frames, the polished floor, the family portraits on the wall. My childhood, my sacrifices, my loyalty, all erased in one sentence. Ryan finally whispered, "Mom, maybe we should talk about this later." "Don't defend her," she snapped. "She made her choices." Quote. Her words struck something inside me, something that had been buried for years beneath obedience and silence. I didn't say another word. I finished my wine, placed the glass down gently, and stood up. "Excuse me," I said, voice steady, heart shattering. I suddenly lost my appetite. As I walked out, I could still hear them talking behind me as if nothing had happened, like I'd already been erased. Outside, the winter air hit me hard, cold, and sharp. I wrapped my coat tighter and took a long breath. For a moment, I thought about just letting it go again, pretending it didn't hurt, pretending I didn't care. But that night, something inside me shifted because I realized my mother wasn't just taking away my inheritance. She was taking away my place in the family, and I had spent my entire life earning it. I looked back at the glowing windows of the house that used to be mine, and that's when it hit me something my mother didn't know, something Ryan prayed I'd never use. I knew what they were hiding, and if she wanted war, I was finally ready to give her one. Grace tiết lộ rằng cô đang nắm giữ một bí mật có thể phá hủy cả gia đình, điều mà chính mẹ và em trai không hề biết. I couldn't sleep that night. The echo of her words, "You're no longer in the will," kept replaying in my mind like a broken record. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's face calm, proud, untouchable. The face of a woman who had just erased her own daughter from existence and didn't even blink. I sat in my apartment, surrounded by case files and cold coffee, staring at the city lights outside my window. I'd spent my entire career defending people from injustice, yet somehow I had become a victim of the cruelest kind. Injustice at home. My phone buzzed. Ryan. Grace, can we talk? Mom didn't mean it like that. I almost laughed. Didn't mean it? She'd said it with the precision of a knife. Every word calculated, deliberate, and final. Don't, I texted back. You had a chance to say something at the table. You didn't. No reply. Just those 3 little dots, and then nothing. I put the phone down and opened my old folders, the ones I swore I'd never touch again. Inside were documents, emails, and transaction records from Walker Holdings, the family business. My mother had always trusted Ryan to manage it. But 2 years ago, while reviewing a merger case, I stumbled upon something odd: fake invoices, shell companies, and unaccounted transfers. I confronted Ryan back then. He'd begged me to stay quiet, said he'd fix it, said it would destroy Mom if anyone found out. I believed him, because, even though we were never close, I still loved my brother. But now, I wondered what loyalty had ever earned me. I started reading again. Every number, every email, every lie. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from focus. That same fire I had in court was burning again, but this time, it wasn't for a client. It was for me. By sunrise, I'd confirmed it. Ryan had laundered over $3 million through shell accounts under a charity in my mother's name. Her name. I laughed out loud, the sound echoing off my apartment walls. My family had cut me out to protect a fraud. Later that day, I called an old friend, Detective Laura Chen. We'd worked together on several corruption cases before. I didn't give her the whole story. Not yet. Just enough to test the waters. Laura, hypothetically speaking, I said, what would happen if someone found proof their family member was embezzling company funds? Depends, she said. If they're smart, they report it before the feds do. If not, they go down with them. That line hit me harder than she knew, because that's exactly what I'd been doing my whole life, going down with them. When I hung up, I made a decision. No more silence. No more playing the obedient daughter. That night, I went back to the Walker mansion. The lights were still on, even though it was nearly midnight. Through the window, I saw Mom in the living room, sipping tea like a queen after conquest. She looked up when I entered. Grace, she said calmly, I didn't expect you back. I know, I replied. You never do. I walked straight to her desk and placed a folder in front of her, neatly bound, labeled, and damning. She didn't touch it. What is this? Proof, I said, of what you've been protecting. Her expression didn't change, but her hands tightened around her teacup. I don't know what you think you've found, but it's Ryan. I cut her off. He's been using your charity fund to hide stolen money, and you've been signing the papers without reading them. For the first time, she looked afraid. Grace, she whispered, you don't understand. Families handle these things privately. I smiled. That's exactly the problem, Mom. You've been handling everything privately, lying, covering, pretending, but not anymore. I could feel my heart pounding, adrenaline rushing through every vein. For years, I'd stayed silent to keep the peace. But peace built on lies isn't peace, it's prison. Mom finally spoke, voice trembling. If you expose him, you'll destroy us all. I leaned forward, eyes locked on hers. Maybe that's what needs to happen. I turned and walked out before she could answer. My heels clicked sharply on the marble floor, each step echoing like a verdict. Outside, the air smelled like rain and freedom. For the first time in years, I felt alive, terrified. Yes, but alive. Because now, I had the power. And this time, I wasn't going to let them silence me. Tell me, if you were in my place, would you protect your family's reputation or expose the truth, even if it meant destroying everything? Comment below, I really want to know what you'd do. The next few days passed in silence, the kind that presses down on you like heavy fog. I went to work. I smiled in meetings. I argued cases in court. But underneath every word, my mind was somewhere else. At night, I came home and stared at the folder lying on my kitchen counter, the one filled with everything I had on Ryan: proof of fraud, proof of deceit, proof that my family's name was built on lies. I used to think secrets protected people, that keeping quiet was a kind of love. But love, I was beginning to realize, doesn't demand silence. It demands honesty. I opened the folder again. Every document, every signature, every false report. My mother's elegant handwriting was there, approving transactions she never understood. Ryan's name was everywhere. His arrogance bled through the ink. I remembered the way he used to tell me, "You overthink everything, Grace. Not everything's a conspiracy." But now, every number I'd traced led to him. Every missing cent pointed back to the golden boy of the Walker family. I spent hours connecting the dots. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, dummy charities used as donation channels, and the worst part, all of it under the name of the Margaret Walker Foundation for Women, my mother's pride and joy. If this ever came to light, the scandal would destroy her reputation. The donors would vanish, her legacy gone. But it wasn't my fault. I hadn't signed those checks. I hadn't built a career on lies. They had. The following morning, I received an email from Ryan. "We need to talk. Don't do anything stupid." No greeting, no apology, just that. I ignored it, but that evening, he showed up at my apartment anyway. He was wearing his usual perfect suit, the kind that made people trust him instantly. "Grace," he said the moment I opened the door, "we can fix this." I didn't invite him in, but he pushed past me like he always did when we were kids. "Fix what?" I asked. He turned, frustration already visible on his face. "You know what? The accounts, the reports, whatever you think you found." "I don't think, Ryan. I know." He exhaled sharply. "It's not what it looks like. The money's temporary. Just a shift between departments. You don't understand the scale of our operations." I crossed my arms. "I understand enough to know you stole from a charity, and that Mom helped you cover it." His jaw clenched. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, he muttered, "You'd really do this to your own family?" The words stung. He knew exactly where to aim. "I didn't do anything," I said. "You did. You and her." Quote. He walked toward me, lowering his voice. "You've always been jealous. You can't stand that Mom trusts me more." I felt my pulse quicken. "Trust? You call this trust?" "She's signing away her name to cover your crimes." He smirked. "You wouldn't dare go public." "Wouldn't I?" For a second, his mask cracked. I saw fear, real fear, flicker in his eyes. Then he straightened his tie and stepped back. "You think this will make her love you?" he said coldly. "Exposing me? Destroying everything she built? You'll just prove her right that you're selfish, that you don't belong in this family." He left after that, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled. I stood there, breathing heavily, trying to calm the storm inside me. Every word he said echoed in my head: selfish, jealous, outsider. He was wrong. I didn't want revenge. I wanted justice. I wanted to stop living in a house of lies, built by people who thought blood excused everything. Later that night, I called my mother. She didn't answer at first. When she finally did, her tone was calm, almost rehearsed. "Grace, if this is about Ryan, don't make things worse than they are." "Worse?" I said quietly. "He's been stealing for years. You signed the documents. Do you even realize what you've done?" "I've done what mothers do," she said. "I've protected my family." Quote. For a long moment, I didn't say anything. There it was, her truth. spoken with the same conviction she used to justify every wound she'd ever inflicted. Protecting doesn't mean lying, Mom, I whispered. It means doing what's right even when it hurts. You wouldn't understand, she said. You don't have children. She hung up before I could respond. I sat on the couch, staring at the silent phone in my hand, and realized something I'd never dared to admit before. My mother would rather lose me than lose control. The next morning, I made copies of everything: the documents, the bank records, the emails. I didn't know yet what I would do with them, but I knew one thing for certain. The truth was no longer a secret I could afford to keep. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what came next. The weekend came, and I knew it was time. There was no turning back. I drove to the Walker mansion, folder in hand, every step echoing with the weight of what was about to happen. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. For the first time in years, I felt in control. When I entered the grand foyer, the house smelled of polished wood and expensive candles. Mom was in the living room, seated in her usual chair, knitting something delicate and useless. Ryan was pacing near the window, checking his phone, oblivious to the tension that would soon consume the room. I cleared my throat. We need to talk. All of us. Mom looked up, her expression unreadable. Grace, what is this about? I dropped the folder on the coffee table. It's about everything you've been hiding. Ryan, the shell accounts, the charities, the lies. Mom, the documents you signed, knowing exactly what they were. It ends now. Ryan froze, his confident facade cracked for just a second. Grace, you don't understand. I understand enough, I said, stepping closer. I understand that the Walker name has been used as a shield for your crimes, and I've kept quiet for too long. Mom set down her knitting slowly, her eyes narrowing. You think you have the right to accuse your brother? To accuse me? I don't think, I said calmly. I know. I opened the folder, sliding the documents across the table toward her. Look at them. Every transaction, every falsified report, every cent Ryan stole, and every time you signed off on it, thinking ignorance would protect you. Her face paled, though she tried to mask it with dignity. Grace, this isn't how families resolve things. Oh, I see, I said. So lying, cheating, and covering up your son's fraud is how families resolve things. My voice shook, not with fear, but with fury. I spent my whole life trying to be the daughter you'd be proud of, the one who followed the rules, who respected the family. And what did it get me? Erased from the will, treated like I didn't exist, treated like I was nothing. Ryan's jaw clenched. Grace, please. You don't understand the scale of what I had to do. You're making this personal, and it's not. It's always personal, I shouted. It's personal every time you throw me aside, every time you pretend I don't matter. And now you've crossed the line. Using Mom's name, her trust, to steal millions? That's personal, Ryan. That's betrayal, and I will not stay silent any longer. Mom's hands trembled slightly as she reached for a cup of tea, but didn't drink. She looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw something in her eyes besides judgment. Fear, shock, disbelief. Ryan stepped forward, voice low and sharp. Grace, don't make this public. If you do, it'll ruin everything, Mom, the company, the family. You'll destroy us all. I laughed, a cold, bitter laugh. Destroy you? You've already destroyed us. You've destroyed the trust, the honesty, the family I thought we had. I'm not destroying you. I'm exposing the truth. And if you can't handle it, that's your problem, not mine. Mom swallowed hard. Grace, do you realize what you're saying? You're threatening your own brother, your own family. The Walker name, our legacy. Everything you're about to do will stain it. I know, I said. And I'm ready for that. Because the Walker name shouldn't be stained by lies. It should stand for integrity. Something I've fought for my entire life. Something I thought you believed in too. Ryan's face turned pale. He opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off. No, I've heard enough excuses. I'm done pretending this is about loyalty. This is about accountability. And for once, you will face it, both of you. Mom looked at me for a long moment, her composed mask slipping. You've changed, she whispered, almost to herself. Yes, I said quietly. I have. And I'm done being invisible in my own family. I gathered the folder and walked toward the door, leaving them both frozen, one in fear, one in shock. My heels clicked sharply on the marble floor, a sound that felt like the final verdict. I didn't look back. For the first time in my life, I was walking out not as the obedient daughter, not as the overlooked sibling, but as myself, a woman unafraid to stand up, to expose lies, and to claim her rightful place in the truth. It didn't take long for the consequences to hit. Within days, my lawyer contacts and Detective Chen confirmed what I already knew. The documents, the emails, the transfers, everything was irrefutable. Ryan couldn't hide. Mom couldn't protect him anymore. The perfect veneer of the Walker family was cracking, and I'd been the one to nudge it open. I remember the day it all came out vividly. Ryan stormed into my office, pacing like a caged animal. His tie was loosened, his suit rumpled, the golden boy of the family looking like a frightened teenager. "Grace, you can't do this," he shouted. "Do you know what you're risking? Mom, the company, everything we built gone." Quote, "I know exactly what I'm risking," I said, calm, collected, hands folded on my desk. "I'm risking nothing that isn't already tainted by lies. What you did, what you've hidden, it's not just illegal, it's immoral, and it's time you faced it." He stopped pacing, glaring. "You'd ruin your own family for… what? A grudge?" I leaned forward. "Not a grudge. Justice. Truth. Something you clearly don't understand." By the afternoon, Ryan had no choice but to confess to federal investigators. Every account, every fraudulent transaction, every shell company, laid bare. His arrogance shattered, replaced by fear and panic. And for the first time, I saw him vulnerable, exposed, like a child caught stealing from the very people who loved him. Meanwhile, my mother, Margaret Walker, sat in the living room of her mansion, silent. Her hands trembled as she clutched her teacup, eyes wide, unblinking. She had been the authority in our family for decades, untouchable and composed, but now she was forced to witness her son, her golden boy, crumble under the weight of his own lies. I approached her, my voice soft but firm. "Mom, you could have stopped this. You could have said no. You could have demanded honesty. Instead, you chose silence. You enabled him." Her lips quivered. I thought I was protecting him, protecting us." I shook my head slowly. "You were protecting the illusion, not us, not the truth. And illusions don't last. Only reality does." She looked down, unable to meet my gaze. For the first time, I understood her fear. Not fear of me, but fear of reality. Fear of the truth she had long denied. Over the next few days, news of Ryan's crimes leaked. The media swarmed. The company's stock plummeted. Donors to Margaret's charity withdrew in droves. I received messages from people whose lives Ryan's schemes had affected, grateful, relieved, even some angry at me for exposing it. But I knew it had to be done. When I visited the house again, it was different. The energy was tense, fragile, like the calm before a storm passes. Ryan avoided my eyes. Mom barely spoke, her usual authority reduced to quiet despair. I wasn't there to gloat. I wasn't there to punish. I was there to witness the consequences of truth finally catching up. Sitting in the same living room where she had once announced I was erased from the will, I said simply, "It's over now. No more lies. No more pretending." Mom nodded, finally looking at me. I see that now. Maybe I was wrong." I didn't respond. Words weren't necessary. The silence spoke louder than anything I could say. The silence of accountability. The silence of a family forced to confront its own failings. For the first time in my life, I felt a strange clarity. I had taken a stand, exposed the truth, and though the cost was high, it was worth it. The Walker family would never be the same, but neither would I. I had stepped out of the shadows, no longer the overlooked daughter, no longer invisible. I walked out of that house that evening, leaving Ryan to face the authorities and Mom to face the consequences of enabling him. The air was cool, crisp, and for the first time in years, I felt the weight on my shoulders lift. Justice had been served, not in revenge, but in truth. And though the Walker name might never recover fully, I knew something no one could take away. I had reclaimed myself. Months had passed since everything had fallen apart. The Walker mansion, once a place of laughter and veiled tension, now felt hollow. Ryan was dealing with legal proceedings, his name splashed across newspapers and websites as a cautionary tale of greed. Mom, she was quieter now, humbled in ways I had never imagined. And me? I had moved on. I had taken the first plane to New York, set up my own law practice, and slowly, meticulously, rebuilt my life on my own terms. There were no golden chairs, no inherited wealth, no family legacy handed to me on a silver platter. There was only me, my choices, and the work I loved. I often think about the dinner when Mom told me I was no longer in the will. That moment of utter rejection had felt like the end, but in reality, it had been the beginning. The beginning of realizing that my worth was not determined by anyone else, not my mother, not Ryan, not even the name Walker. It was mine, and mine alone. I started taking cases. I was passionate about women fighting for justice, families wronged by corporations, people silenced by power. Every time I won, every time I helped someone reclaim their dignity, I felt a small, quiet victory. Not just for them, but for myself. Because in standing up to my own family, I had learned how to stand up for everyone else. I heard from Mom occasionally, short emails, careful words, apologetic tones. She never asked me to return, never tried to guilt me back. She simply acknowledged what had happened. And I forgave her not for her sake, but for mine. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing her actions. It was about freeing myself from carrying the weight of anger forever. Ryan, I didn't hate him. Not really. I understood the arrogance, the entitlement, the pressure to always be perfect in a family that valued appearances over truth. But he had to face the consequences. And facing them was the only way he could possibly learn accountability, something I had only begun to understand when I finally refused to be silenced. I remember one quiet evening, sitting in my small office, looking out over the city's skyline. The lights glimmered like stars, countless lives intersecting and diverging, stories unfolding, people fighting and failing and learning. I thought of my family, of the mistakes and betrayals, and realized that life was about choice. Each moment, each decision, we chose who we wanted to be, and I had chosen. I wasn't just Grace Walker, the daughter who had been ignored, overlooked, erased from a will. I was Grace Walker, a woman who had discovered her own power, her own voice, and her own path. I had reclaimed myself from the shadows of my family, and in doing so, I had created a life I could be proud of. It wasn't easy. Nothing worth doing ever is. But I had learned that family doesn't always define you. Blood doesn't guarantee love or loyalty. And wealth doesn't create respect. What mattered was integrity, courage, and the ability to stand tall when the world tries to knock you down. Looking back now, I can almost laugh at the irony. The very thing that had hurt me the most, Mom's cruel words, the disinheritance, Ryan's betrayal, had become my liberation. The pain had taught me resilience. The betrayal had taught me clarity. The loss had given me freedom. I closed my eyes and smiled softly. I had no golden mansion, no inherited fortune, and no carefully curated family legacy. But I had something far more valuable, myself, whole and unbroken. And in that moment, I knew that the Walker name and all the chaos it had carried could never touch what I had gained. Not my integrity, not my voice, not my life. I had taken control, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely, utterly free. I was Grace Walker, and finally, I was exactly where I belonged.